Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Tuesday, March 25th, 2008 episode of your friendly neighborhood redevelopment agency.
Episode.
That's right.
Good way.
Mr. City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Agency members: Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Chairman Draymond.
Here. Have your report, please.
The agenda for the March 25th, 2008 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, March 20th, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. First item.
Approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved. Second.
Okay, we had someone out, did we not?
Yes, Mr. Yusefian was not present on the 26th of February.
I'll move the minutes.
No, second.
Right?
I have the same minutes. It says I was out on the housing. It says all present.
There's the one on
26th
February
of
26th says
February.
Yusefian absent.
Absent.
Oh, I'm
Very
talking
first
about
one.
the March 4th, sorry.
Yeah, March 4th. You were
February 26th.
So
I'll abstain on the 26th. I was here on the March 4th.
with
Okay.
that abstention, the minutes are approved and submitted. Next item.
Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the redevelopment agency may question or respond to a speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the executive director for an investigation and report.
Not having any cards, oral communications is closed. Next item.
On the business agenda at 6A is Director of Development Services regarding professional services agreement change order. At 6A1 is motion approving contract change order with the Nelson Nygaard Consulting Association in the amount of $90,000 downtown mobility plan. Total contract amount for $717,706. And at A2 is a resolution appropriating $65,000 to provide funds for the change order.
All right. Let's go to the city manager, who I guess probably
Well, let me-
want to go to Mr. Lansford. Yes, sir.
Yes, let me preface Phil's comments by saying that I'd asked Phil and Mr. Zern to bring the matter forward to retain Nelson Nygaard, particularly Bonnie Nelson, who you recall was the young lady who was the point person on our mobility plan, to come in and assist us in the implementation phase of the components that have to do with finding mechanisms and creating legislation to fund the downtown shuttle or trolley or whatever that system is going to be. My concern has been that that will likely take quite a bit of community outreach, potentially legislation by the City Council to implement some form of ongoing funding mechanism, such as a transit benefit district of some kind, to support the buzz, as we referenced in the transit plan. Leaving it, frankly, in-house to staff, I just don't think it'll get the level of attention we need and the timeliness we'll need. Staff is prone to look at intersections, signals, lines on the street, railroad crossing, those kinds of things. This one component of the mobility plan, which I think is very critical, every time a large building goes in, we will have lost an opportunity. And right now, that we have a bit of a downtime in the housing market, but we need to be prepared when the housing market come back and we have a little more interest and opportunities for development of housing. We need to have the statutory structure in place and a system ready to go so we can make that, frankly, conditions on development. That'll take some legislation, in all likelihood, possibly development of some district structures, working with legal. And Bonnie and her firm are really the right people to do that implementation in a timely fashion. So I'd like to retain her for that work, and she's given us a proposal that you have before you.
Mr. Yusefian, did you comment?
Yeah, I had comments, and one of them was maybe the way the staff report was written. One of the items was meet to review mobility plan recommendations and screen policy. These are the people who wrote the mobility plan, so what do they need to review? That was my thing. The other thing is we're talking about, I remember when this project was done, we spent almost $700,000 on this. We were supposed to go ahead and put some meters on Brand,
Right.
and we actually put the money aside. The Merchants Association showed up in here and said, we want it. We gave direction. This was done during the budget of last year, and Mr. Zern was given direction. He was checking on the machines, and he found the machines. and I'm yet looking and nothing is out there. And in the meantime, I drive Sunset Boulevard, and all the machines are out there. You go to Pasadena, all the machines are out there, and now I have to spend another $65,000, $90,000, get this consultant to come back to basically regurgitate what she already did?
No, no.
Let's see if we can get
Okay.
an answer. Let's see if we can get...
That's what I got from the staff report. So somebody correct me if
Yeah,
I'm...
Mr. Chair, the answer to that is no. Not to come back and regurgitate.
But your explanation was much better.
Good. You will recall that when you approved the mobility study, I made a comment that we could very well want to have Ms. Nelson come back for implementation, because I know the capacity of transportation section. They're dealing with a lot of stuff, especially around the Americana with the railroad crossings. And exactly what you have expressed has been my concern about lots of components of the mobility plan, but particularly this one, because this component that deals with finding a way to create a structure for long-term funding of something like a trolley in the downtown area, that is a very sophisticated approach, and one that, frankly, I'm not sure our traffic engineers are necessarily inclined to be most effective at pursuing. So, no, her role is not to come back and regurgitate our plan. We know what our plan says. It's to take, in particular, these key recommendations, like how do we finance long-term the mobility improvements that we want to see in the downtown, particularly the trolley or the buzz, whatever we're going to call it, to begin to implement that component in particular. Frankly, meters in the downtown area, transportation will be very good at that, and I know that's progressing, maybe not the time frame we'd all like to see, but they do have a fairly large workload. That is progressing. They're very good at that. This sort of thing, implementing something like a transportation district to fund long-term, that's pretty sophisticated stuff of working with legal. Engineers will play a role, but frankly, working with downtown property interests to bring them together to support something like a transportation district, that's pretty sophisticated work, and I'm afraid it will continue to fall behind as we try and get stuff done. So that one in particular, I'd really like to use this firm to come in and make sure it gets implemented in a timely fashion.
Well, that I don't have a problem, because I specifically remember Mr. Weaver asking Bonnie, is she going to help us in implementation, and her answer was, my contract's up.
That's right.
This is it. I'm done. After I go home tonight, you're not going to see me again. And I think Mr. Weaver suggested that, oh, that would be, too bad. Maybe we can get you back to do this. So I think it's good to have her do what you said.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're not having somebody come back, try to explain to us what is it that they wrote.
If we,
Okay.
if I can, if we were proposing to hire a different consulting firm, you might get that, but here it's the same lady who
Right.
managed the development of the mobility
This
plan.
will be the smart
All
thing
right,
to do.
Mr. Zern, do you have anything to add to that?
Mr. Chair, members of the...
With regard to meters and so on?
Yes.
We are handling the meters. We are handling the transit operation. We'll be back. The meters are currently the RFPs on the street. One of the things that occurred is Rand Merchants did come and talk to us. We met extensively with them. First thing was to address a particular issue that they were having now that was folks that were violating current law, meters or no meters. And so we worked with the police department to fix that on an interim basis. Then a whole new generation of meters were released at the end of the year. So we went back and looked at those and showed some of those to the merchants just to see, get a feel from what they thought their clientele might be interested in using. So what we're going to come back with is 2 or 3 different two or three different units in different places and try those out for a 30 to 60-day period. But we're probably 2 to 3 weeks away from getting proposals in for the meters. Then I will be back to you during the budget session with a whole, I'm thinking, as I discussed earlier with Mr. Starbird, a dedicated study session to talk about the transit.
Thank you, Mr. Zern. We so appreciate that.
I'm sure you do.
And
I'll try to keep the
you'll give-
PowerPoints down to a minimum, but there is a need for us to discuss the entire transit operation and what the future of that holds.
All right, Mr. Quintero.
And it's my understanding the new generation of meters, that the same people that do the electronic voting machines, that's the same company here.
Quintero, I hope not, because these machines involve putting credit cards and debit cards in, so I'd hate for
Yeah,
that.
so it is
to-
just like the,
It is, exactly.
all right.
Well, I'm for this. I think this woman, this firm has done a great job so far, and we need to move on it and move quickly. I mean, we've got to get our meters in place, get our, what I hope will be CNG trolley system, a natural gas trolley system going through the downtown. We've got to get going, so the sooner the better.
Mr. Starbird and then Mr.
I just want to note,
Najarian.
I see the core and main focus of Ms. Nelson's work, items 2 through 6, but frankly, I'd like to have her input. This is on the third page of your staff report, but also a review of number 7, which is the various components of the transportation plans. Which one are we implementing in-house, and which ones do we need some further assistance to make sure they're moving along at a pace that you would want? But it'll be primarily items 2 through 6, which is implementing really legislation to support the downtown transportation system recommendations.
Mr. Najarian.
Thank you. Our Traffic and Transportation Department is swamped with local issues and regional issues, crossing issues, construction issues. We should have had this before us several months ago because we are on the verge of a change in our downtown traffic in an exponential manner. I think it would be unwise to nitpick the money that is budgeted towards implementing this program.
Mr. Yusefian.
I have one question. Her contract was over, right? So why do we need to have a change of contract? What can be just a new contract for $50,000?
I don't know.
Bill.
Mr. Chairman, Member Yusefian, the scope of development included what was adopted in November of '06. This is in addition to, so while we had her contract, the scope had ended, the contract was actually still open. So technically on our books, there's a little bit of money left on the contract. This is a change order asking you to increase that scope and increase the funding to pay for that additional scope.
All right, let's go to the public. We have one card from Herbert Milano who wants to tell us that Nelson Nygaard was in reality the 1932 silver medalist from Norway in curling, as I understand it. Mr. Milano.
Good afternoon, members of the Redevelopment Agency and city staff. My name is Herbert Milano. I was able to be present and listen carefully to at least 2 of the presentations made on the mobility study. And I thought this particular report and preparation of that particular study was done to excellence. I think it was done very well. It addresses many issues. What came to my mind, though, is something similar to what Mr. Yusefian stated concerning why couldn't some of those recommendations be implemented right off the bat after this particular study was made. Many of those studies gave us an example, activities and performance objectives that the city of Pasadena had actually implemented and other cities had done. And they were not really very complex objectives to do. I remember 2 particular issues that were rather relevant. One of them was the underutilization of parking in many of the structures, especially when the time was of the essence to get them fully utilized. I remember the one on Orange and the one on Maryland as well. The other one was concerning the disparity with regard to the pricing of parking that occurred between on-street parking and parking available at these various different structures. And when I look at implementation of something, once a particular study is given to staff, I would imagine it is within the qualifications of staff to be able to implement the recommendations made in a study. So sometimes I wonder why we would need a consultant to come back and guide the implementation of those areas that are part and parcel with regard to the daily performance and the daily jobs of somebody in parking and transportation. As I think back on the quality of this particular study, the immediate thing to me was that there could be some relief for the parking problems that we have in this part of Glendale, not too far away from where my apartment building is, because many of the merchants on Brand, and their employees are parking on the streets, basically taking up, residential parking during the day, and becomes rather difficult. Whereas there's already parking available at the Orange parking structure. I know that some of the merchants, but one in particular, Portos, have come before you to try to address a more practical fee for them to encourage their employees to partake of the use of that particular parking area. So I think that it's all part and parcel of the same study. Those issues were covered under that study, and yet it's been, what, a year and a half now, 2 years, and I see personally, I see no action on this thing. Anyway, so those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Milano. Mr. Starbird?
Yeah, just a quick comment to point out that you have been applying and implementing various concepts, I'll call them tools of toolbox, that were brought out as part of the mobility study. For example, underutilization of parking, your discussion with the media group on the DPSS building, the possible use of our own marketplace garage, as well as ASLA, and looking for ways to better utilize those public garages, not place that burden on developers. The various concepts that you've reviewed with a number of the housing projects that have come in that were pointed out as things we should consider as part of the mobility study, such as valet parking programs. I'll call them mechanized parking structures, which will be the first of their kind in Glendale, certainly. Tandem parking concepts, things that weren't able to be considered under our old parking standards, were pointed out in the study as concepts you should consider to begin to look for ways to reduce the cost of development, at the same time encourage alternative uses of mobility downtown and not, frankly, an overabundance of parking. So those concepts have been brought in, and you have implemented and improved them as part of a number of housing projects that have come to you in the downtown area.
Okay. Do we have a motion on this?
So moved.
Mr. City Clerk, would you please?
Agency members Najarian,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver, Yusefian,
Aye.
Chairman Draymond.
Yes. Next item, please.
Is there any agency member or staff comments?
Mr. Yusefian.
On a related subject, Mr. Chair, I think I was the chair of the redevelopment agency, or maybe I was mayor, when they started redoing the Brand Boulevard. And at the time, I remember we had a design for all the bus benches and so on and so forth. We purchased the bus benches, and then we realized that they are too large, they cannot fit in those locations. So we did not install them. I got emails, and I'm pretty sure some of you got the same emails that I get, which people are complaining that why is it that other parts of the town are getting this nice little green, bus enclosures and bus benches, and why hasn't this come to Brand Boulevard? How long does it take? So the bottom line is, this will be the third year now. The question is, when do we see bus benches on Brand? When is it going to be finished? We're still waiting for that furniture. Good thing you didn't leave.
Mr. Chair, members of the agency, we have decided to go with the firm that is providing the standard benches and shelters that you see throughout the city. However, we wanted something more unique to Brand, and they agreed to provide that for us. So they have essentially custom-built a shelter for us. It's taken longer than I had wanted to. I know it's taken longer than you had wanted to. But those shelters are near completion, and we should see installation all done by the summer.
Did this agency see the design?
I'm not sure. I don't believe so. But we can bring that design
The
to
reason I'm bringing in is because the agency approved the previous design that was built, kind of a stainless steel color, but it was painted. Then we realized for some engineering reasons we couldn't use it. They were large, they needed to be bored down and...
8 feet.
Okay. So we saw that, we approved it. The other bus benches, we have seen that because this council made a decision to allow as part of advertising to be used, and they will provide us the bus benches. So we know what that is. Now you're telling us there's a new design. We have no clue what that looks like. It probably turned out to be very nice looking. The only thing is, my experience has been that generally when this type of projects come forward, it is always brought up in front of the agency, if it's an agency area, or council. Don't forget, we spent quite a lot of time over the signs on San Fernando Road, what it's going to look like. So it would have highly been appreciated if at least we were given that. So now that it's already built, and I understand it's almost done. Could you possibly send us copies of what it
Absolutely.
looks like? Thank you.
Absolutely.
And could you give us a timeline when they will be installed?
I'll send that schedule with you. The last I checked last week was they were getting ready to initiate the installation, which we have all of the electrical conduit already set in place for those. These are the advertising benches. These are provided to us free of charge with advertising revenue back, but I'll get you pictures of those. What we tried to do, Mr. Yusefian, is get a shelter that was as low profile as possible, that you could see through so we wouldn't block the building, yet still be able to try to provide some shade.
And would it still have the next bus
Yes, sir.
Point of
parking
order,
to it?
I'm getting a point of order from the city attorney. Maybe we should agendize this, we don't want to flirt with the Brown Act, so we
All
can
right.
ask questions,
All
we want
right.
to deprive the
All right, gentlemen.
members of the public from...
We'll get
We
you the-
will, you will bring this back to us,
I will
Steve.
bring the
Thank you, I'd appreciate that. All right, next item, please.
Any new business?
See none.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We stand adjourned at 3:25.